All right. 4, 3, 2. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Entrepreneur Hour. I've got a dear friend and somebody who has actually helped me really transform my life over the last, when did we start? January? Last 3-4 months?
January 15th.
90 days of deep dive is what we did. And so interestingly enough, this is your repeat guest. You came on my show. That's how we were introduced. I don't remember who introduced us, but I remember somebody just said, this is who she is, Michele Molitor. This is the work that she does. And I was like, being a brain nerd that I am, I was like, yep, let's go.
I am a brain nerd. Sure.
So I hope that in that episode, you felt like, wow, this guy actually knows some NLP and knows his stuff. Because I assume that there are some podcasts you go on where it's just completely like alien. It's just foreign to them.
Yes, there are those.
They don't even know what that acronym even stands for. So being a brain nerd myself, I know a lot about NLP. And for those listening, neuro-linguistic programming. And I can let you talk more about that. We're not going to get too much into that today because we did it in the previous episode. And I'm going to link that in the description below, guys. So you can go back and listen to Michele's first rodeo with me on the show. But it's an amazing way in short, right? Correct me if I'm not doing it justice here, but to really rewire your brain in the ways that your brain works. There are a lot of neural connections that have been ingrained in you from a young age that are preconditioned due to life and experiences and all the things that happen to us. And sometimes no matter how hard you try, you can't disrupt those brainwave patterns, right? Those neurological wirings. And so that's why when people try to do things with like a more conditional or conventional therapy, right? The sit down and talk it out on a couch kind of therapy, they don't get the results they're looking for because it doesn't cause that pattern disruption like NLP causes.
Because it's stuck in your subconscious mind. And oftentimes you don't even know those patterns are there because they were implanted at such an early age. Right. Because as a kid, you hear stuff, you see stuff, you experience stuff, and it just gets absorbed into your brain, into your subconscious, right? So it's all just sitting there guiding how you operate on a daily basis until one day you're like, wait, this doesn't work for me. How do I do this differently?
Right. Well, welcome back to the show. I didn't even welcome you to the show yet. And this is the last 90 days or more than that actually now. We've been playing role reversal. So me sitting on this side and talking to you through Zoom in this capacity is just totally different. Like we're switching the sides of the table again.
Yes.
Because most of the time it's you talking and I'm having like just different role reversals.
You're sitting in the chair. Now I'm sitting
in the chair. I'm in the chair. So what we want to do today, and as a follow-up to the first time you came to the show, and one of the unique things I think maybe about me and what I've done with you as a client or as a patient, whatever you want to call it, or the combination of the two, is, you know me, I'm all about that biohacking, biometric life. And so we want to share the journey that I went through because it was a powerful one. And it was a transformation beyond what I could have hoped for or imagined. But we have some, we have some raw data to pull out that I track and I've been tracking for some time. And anybody that knows me knows that I'm always looking for the next advantage, right? The next whatever it is, and not just to succeed, right? I think some people, when they hear me say that, they're just like, oh, he just wants to be wealthy and, be successful. And I feel like people, they don't know me if that's what they think, right? It's about living, it's about living at my highest level of contribution in all areas, right? Like enjoying my marriage, enjoying my personal life, like wanting to go and do things and have fun, and like not looking back at life and being like, oh shit, I could have really enjoyed or done more in these various areas. And I don't want any of that. I want to leave no meat on the bone. I want my last check to bounce. I want to just give it to the fullest, balls to the wall.
I love it.
Yeah. So anyway, so this is going to be a little bit of a back and forth, which usually, I'm the one asking the questions and stuff like that. This is going to be a little bit different for those listening or watching. So what I want to talk about first was kind of like the initial inception of, we had our call, right? About what was going on in my life and this and that. What were your initial, perceptions of what I was dealing with? And then kind of how did you feel about what we were going to do to deal with that? Or like, how are you going to approach us dealing with some of these issues that I dealt with in my life? Did you feel overwhelmed by how much we had to work with, or did you kind of know where we wanted to start, or kind of talk about your strategy behind that, I guess, a little bit?
Sure. And for those who are listening in for the first time, I think it's important to kind of take 2 steps back too, Chris, and know that the work that I do as a rapid transformational therapist and coach is really about, as he said earlier, helping you rewire your brain, eliminating subconscious beliefs that are getting in your way and holding you back. So when Chris came to me and said, hey, I really want to work with you, and we had a discovery session. And as I listened to what he was saying, I could see very clearly that there was multiple layers of old stuff, old beliefs that were very much ingrained in your subconscious that had been running you really, really hard, which is what led to the adrenal burnout that you've been suffering from for the last 3 years and has caused your health issues, right? And so I knew wholeheartedly that those underlying beliefs about yourself or the drivers for the crush it attitude that you've had for so very long, and the reasonings behind that. And so I was really excited, actually, because I wanted you to be free of that, because I knew how I could see very clearly how powerful you are in your own right, and your wisdom and your expertise that you have to offer. And it was just like taking the top off and popping the lid open to allow you to be a lot more free to do the good works you're here to do in the world. So,
yeah. Well, and I think one of the hard parts, at least from where I was standing, because I met you at a place of, I think it's fair to say, desperation, because we had all of these. So initially it started with, well, there was a combination of a lot of things going on. For those that are new to my show that don't know this, again, a little bit of context here. Turns out I had a chronic digestive issue that had been going on for over 2 decades. I've only lived 3 decades, so the majority of my life. So at that point, like, it was just normalcy, right? It was just, this is what my life entails. But it had gotten really bad. So like a week or so before my 30th birthday a few years ago, we did a bunch of lab work, like $2,000 worth of lab work, comes back and says, your gut is a disaster. Like, you at this pace are going to have colon cancer by the time you're 40. You're probably not going to be here. Like, this is the worst case of intestinal dysbiosis that I've seen in 35 years of practice for someone your age. My father has had Crohn's, has been a Crohn's sufferer for 35 years. And I saw that he went the pharmaceutical route of prednisone, steroids, possibly Humira if things didn't get better for him. And even so far as they were going to literally remove his colon altogether. Like, he was gonna have to live off a colostomy bag when I was a kid, like, if he didn't stop bleeding, not to be gross. So anyway, so that was really scary for me, right? It's like, here we are at this place. I can either follow the route my dad has gone. I've seen how that road ends, right? Very, very painful road. Or there's this possibility of seeking out a new solution. And I didn't know what that solution entailed. So that's a really scary place. My business, coincidentally, at the same time, or not coincidentally, probably, we were having a lot of issues getting over the next hurdle. And the problem with that is I had pushed myself so hard beyond fumes to get to that point. And what was required for me to do more, I just couldn't be that anymore. Right. And so, like, it was just total system shutdown. So we went on the long and arduous path of first treating the gut, and we did, and it was a tremendous success. I just willpowered my way through it. And I got on like almost 3 trillion CFUs of high potency, one of the best probiotics on the planet, 12 live strains of CFUs of probiotics. Like, VSL3 is it's like the Bugatti of probiotics. Like, it's really expensive stuff. Cleared that up. So I'm like, it's working. I'm good. And then now we're waiting on my endocrine system to kick back in, right? Thyroid, adrenals. When you have thyroid and adrenal issues, you have a lot of hormonal imbalances. You have issues with inflammation. You have a lot of different various mood issues. I had low testosterone. Anything that you can basically measure, I was deficient in. I mean, you look down the list and it looked like a 65-year-old man, right? Or older. So anyways, so gut's fixed. And the working theory is that after you fix the gut, your body can now absorb nutrients like it did before. And then slowly you start to lift out of it. We were kind of hitting a glass ceiling, right? So, and I was getting frustrated, right? So enter, and Kim, my wife, had been saying for a while, I think there's more going on. I think there's some emotional stuff. Like, there's some things that she had been seeing over the years of like, I don't think this is a healthy mindset. I don't think this is healthy that you're carrying this stuff, this whatever it was that came up, and we're going to get into what that stuff looked like. But I think this may be causing a physical limitation for you to like move beyond your current state of physical health, right? And so my doctor kept saying, it's 80% lifestyle. Like I can give you any supplement, I can give you any whatever, 80% of it is lifestyle. And I'm like, fuck, like, okay, I'm doing everything. Like I'm basically not working. I'm working 2 hours a day, if that. I've changed my diet completely. I wasn't eating anything. Like some people have a cheat day. I didn't have a cheat year, literally, not even a single day throughout the year.
Wow.
I'm going to bed at 10 o'clock. I'm doing all my stuff. I'm wearing all my gadgets. There's nothing that I'm not doing right. I'm doing everything by the book. And I'm frustrated because I'm like, what am I missing? Right? Like I'm doing everything right. I'm just not getting there. And he's telling me about these people that he's worked with that had severe adrenal fatigue, which is what I had, also known as an HPA axis dysfunction, by the way, for those, if you want to look into that, or hypoadrenia, which is more scientific than just your typical burnout, diagnosis. But it's a very real thing. It can lead to Addison's disease. I was a stage 3 adrenal sufferer, meaning like you go beyond that and you're going to be hospitalized. Like things are really, really bad. So anyways, we had seen a little bit of improvement, marked improvement, but like we're doing lab work. And this is where it's great that we were able to do this, because I'm doing labs every, once a quarter to see what's going on. Maybe a little bump here, but something else was down, or maybe something here. And then like we weren't making real big improvements. So anyways, I went in kicking and screaming with the idea of I need to start doing something. So I started doing EFT, which is basically acupressure. You do tapping. It's a emotional freedom technique, right? Is what it stands for. Which is really powerful. It does tap into your subconscious. It is a form of NLP. And for like 48 hours, I'd feel great, right? I would be like, hey, that feels good. Let's go. And I would connect on levels that I didn't connect with people before. And I felt this like sense of like a burden lifted off my shoulders, and like, it was really good. And I would, sometimes I would cry and it made me feel better, like, whatever. But then I would kind of like go back into where I was before, right? It was just like the same thought patterns, and it just wasn't enough. It wasn't like it's like we chipped away at it with a chisel. We didn't like plow it with a jackhammer. You know what I mean? Like it was just like, okay, little minor little bump here. So I was looking for more, right? I was like, EFT works great. I think I could EFT my way all the way to Timbuktu, and maybe after years I'll get better. But I wanted something more immediate because I just needed reprieve, right? 2.5 years of suffering from what I've been suffering from. It's not the severity in one given day, which I'm not diminishing that it isn't hard, because it is very hard in one given day. It's difficult to feel like shit every single day for a week. Imagine having the flu or something for 3 years. Like that's really what.
Yikes.
Yeah. Like it's really, really, really tough. So it's more that, it's more the chronic element of it. And like, you just don't ever see any relief or anything. So when I came to you, coming back to full circle here, finally, I was a little bit desperate to find something. But I also think that it was why I was so motivated too, because we're going to get into, how ridiculously
Which makes a huge difference.
I approach this thing.
Level of motivation.
But I think the biggest thing that I had, and one of the things that I was going to talk to you about, was a little bit of my skepticism about it, because I had been pre-framed with like NLP being what EFT was for me, right? So and then hypnotherapy, I had been on cruises and I had seen like hypnotherapy sessions where, people are quacking like a duck and doing the Macarena. And
this is not that, people.
And I'm just like, okay, well, that's hokey, right? Like that's not, you can't actually be hypnotized. Like you can't actually, like they were totally like staged or paid actors or whatever. Like that's not real, right? So I had a little bit of, just due to cultural perceptions of what hypnotherapy entails, I was a little bit, this isn't pure hypnotherapy what you guys do, but it borrows elements of hypnotherapy with RTT. But I had that a little bit of that going on. But I think when I talked to you about it and started doing my research and started hearing the transformations, I looked at a statistic that showed that 33, don't quote me on these statistics, but something like 25 to 34%, whether it was cognitive behavioral therapy or like conventional therapy, after like 4 or 5 years, that those amount of people, like 33% of people, showed marked improvement, right? That they had a success in that therapy after 4 or 5 years. For RTT, it was like 93% after 5 sessions or something ridiculous. Like, so I started hearing these stories and hearing the stuff that you had said where people had these like massive transformations. And I was like, I'm all in. So that all said, I want to get that out of the way because that's covering a lot of ground as quickly as possible so I can get to talking about what your perception
Sure. And it's all important background.
Absolutely. Yeah, right. So thanks for hanging tight while I explain that to everybody. But let's talk about the first session, right? Like there was a moment in that first session where I felt it. Well, let me backtrack first because here's the thing on the whole hypnosis thing. This blew my mind. So Michele does her, which I guess is like a trained thing. I don't know enough about it to know if that's like a customary thing or if it's just like a you thing. But like basically you're like talking me down, right? It's like you're, on step 10, and you're walking down to step 9. You like modulate your voice in a way that's very, jazzy.
It's very, very soothing.
Yes. And then so I enter into like this lower brainwave state, right? More of like
an alpha brainwave state.
Alpha brainwave state, right? So for those who don't know what that is, that's like a step below like what a theta, like nice like flow state is. Like it's a pretty deep brainwave state.
It's that in between sleep and awake state where
Correct.
you're it's actually your super learning state where you're very suggestible, which is why it's a perfect place for you to be inside of hypnosis because it allows you to take in all of the information that you're receiving.
Bingo. So she brings you down to that place. And the whole time I'm sitting there, Michele, and I'm like, this is bullshit. I'm like, she's and I'm like this, I'm going to prove that this isn't right. I'm like, come on, like this isn't. Okay. So in my mind, I'm like having this conversation with myself while she's doing like her counting down. I'm like, come on, this is exactly what I thought it was. What have I done? I just spent this money and it's whatever. So anyways, so then she says, you're going to close your eyes. They're going to be like sealed tight, locked tight, like a vault.
Glued shut, sealed shut, locked tight.
And then she says, and no matter how hard you try to open your eyes, you're not going to be able to open your eyes. And for those watching, I'm trying, like my eyebrows are going up and I am trying my damnedest to open my eyes to prove this woman is wrong. And this is so stupid. And I swear to you, in my head, in that moment, I was like, what is happening? Like your eyes, bro, just open your eyes, bro, open your eyes. And I could not. Now, if I had really, really, really kept pushing, I think I could have, but it was like, I tell people it's like this. It's like a bear hug. Like if I really wrestle you, I can get out of that bear hug, but like, I don't want to because I want to resolve this issue. So I like just keep going with it. But you do have that moment of like, come on, man, like get off me, kind of thing.
Yeah,
like,
prove it.
Prove it. Exactly. But then, so that kind of spooked, like that was like, whoa. And then the next one was, and this time you said, the first time, it was always different, but the first time every session was different. The first time you said, put your arms out, like straight out. And you said the left arm is going to be like you're holding a bag of bricks, right? And it's going to weigh like, it's going to feel like it weighs like 8 tons or something like that or whatever. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, my arm is not going to, like, nothing's going to happen. This is silly. And then next thing I know, like, I'm like, my arm feels really heavy. And next thing I know, like my left arm goes all the way down and I'm like, wow. And then the next thing you said, the next one, just like you have 100 helium balloons or something tied to your right wrist. And next thing you know, I'm sitting here all jazzed up, one hand up in the air and one hand down. I mean, I was in at that point. I'm like, this is, I'm fighting this. And I'm like, dude, come on. And it just happened. Like and I've had several people, I've sent some of your recordings, that you have, and I'll put the description below, guys, the link. This is the one that you guys can download and check out. But I've sent that to people and they had the exact same response. They're like, I was trying I couldn't do it. So the fact that it can be done even via recording is pretty powerful. Like that's pretty cool.
Yep. Absolutely.
So anyways, more context, but eventually we led to a point where you took me to a place visually, right? Like Michele, the goal is to like guide you into a place of like a memory that you have, something that was traumatic for you or really shaped the way that you think and believe about certain things.
Right.
And Matt, go ahead if you want to say something there.
Yeah. And for those who haven't experienced hypnotherapy, it's a combination of cognitive behavioral therapy, neuro-linguistic programming, and hypnosis. And in this process, I'm taking you down into that relaxed state. And then we're asking your subconscious what's at the root, the cause, the reason for this block. And your subconscious remembers everything that's ever happened to you. And so it naturally bubbles up to the surface the information that we need. So it's like sorting through the files. Oh, there's the one we need. Bing. And it pulls it up just like you were on your computer, essentially.
And it's crazy because you were talking to my subconscious and I responded in third person. I'm not that kind of a human. I don't do that. Right? Like I don't talk in third person. My subconscious brain like answered you as though it had its own identity, which was pretty weird. Yeah. And I remember at that time, I'm like, why are you answering in third person? Like in my head, I'm saying that, you know? So it was just a very unique experience. But anyways, so we reached that one point where you had me like approach my younger self in that moment, in that painful moment. Right. And for me, that was a situation with my father, which love him to death. We've never had a better relationship than we have right now. I think he would honestly tell if you talk to him, I'm probably his best friend. But at that time, I think he had his own traumas and own health issues that he just hadn't dealt with that really led to him acting and behaving in certain ways that I think he would redo if he had the chance. Which I know that. And he had bad data, right? It was the way he was brought up. It's breaking that pattern, generational pattern, right? And that's
exactly. It's a pattern interrupt, which absolutely can go from generation to generation to generation until somebody like yourself goes, enough. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to do it that way anymore.
Did you know, side tangent, did you know now that the science has been done, the studies that have been done, they're showing that what you do, so like if you're a smoker, let's say, that like what you do to yourself has the potential health-wise to pass down for generations. It can like set up biological differences in your children and grandchildren. That's so crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's an awesome book called The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. And it talks about, you're going to love it. It's all science. You're going to geek out on it. But it literally has study after study after study about how our beliefs and our behaviors affect literally the 50 trillion cells we have in our body and can actually change our DNA.
That's so
like
wild.
We can change our DNA to degrees by what we tell ourselves and what we do and how we support our body's health as we move forward each and every day. So yeah, you're going to love that.
That's so liberating. It really is. So anyway, so we reached this moment where you had me visualize taking my younger self and like being like, look, man, I got you. Like you never needed anybody. You always had your own back. You always set up the road for yourself. Like almost like taking ownership of like, you were everything you ever needed. You yourself, like you were your own father. Like this sense of empowerment just came over me. And I was like internally, that's how I felt. Like, hell yeah. You know, like and something happened. And I remember like a tear came down my face.
Yeah, it was palpable. It was really palpable.
That's what I wanted to ask you about, because at the end you said you knew that it happened. How did you know that happened at that moment?
Because I'm an empath. I feel things.
Okay.
Right. I feel my clients. I can see it. I mean, I can obviously see it on your face because we're doing our calls over Zoom like this, but I can feel it in my own body. And there was just and I get chills. I get goosebumps. Right. So I know things are shifting. And once we started out the other side of that, your body had relaxed more. There was less resistance. It was a physiological shift that I witnessed. And energetically, I felt it.
Interesting. That's so crazy, because people think that we did this in person. Like I flew out to San Francisco to do this with you in person, and like it was done in the same format that we're doing right now, which is welcome to 2019. It's just so wild that not only could you sense that and feel that, but we're probably 1,000 miles away. I mean, through digital recording in the same capacity we're in right now.
And I've done this work literally with people all over the world, from here to Europe to Australia, and it works. Right. Because when it comes to the hypnosis part, you're just listening. Your eyes are closed. You're just listening to the sound of my voice. Right. But I have learned that I have that gift of being able to sense people really clearly from wherever they are on the planet. It's sometimes not always a gift, but it works.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
So we move forward, and I came out of that first session, and like at that moment when that happened, I remember like a sense of just feeling like so excited, because like I knew that whatever just happened, it meant nothing was ever going to be the same again. Like I knew that something massive had happened.
Yeah.
And I
tell them
remember,
about how you felt the next day. Because by the way, we have Chris has a journal space. We have a private journal space, and he started journaling about what he was feeling and his experience of all this.
Do you want me to read you what I actually wrote?
Yes.
All right, let me pull it up. Yeah, because it's this journal. So just to let people know, this journal that I put together is like 80 pages long on Google Doc. Like it is intense.
Yeah.
All right, so here's what I
He's an excellent student, everyone.
Thank you. My old teachers from grade school and middle school and high school would be like flabbergasted to hear you say that. I was such a rebel. Let's see. First day after session, biggest takeaway or part that is sticking with me the most is you are enough. Feels like I've shifted a thought pattern to my own empowerment and recognized the amazing life I've created for myself. Surprised there was no or little anger towards my father, just pity. Felt for the first time in a long time. Excited to keep exploring this new space. Time has seemingly slowed down a little. I feel more present in time. I don't want to do much of anything other than continue being in this peaceful place. For lack of a better term, I am my own worldly father. Major shift. Felt it as soon as it happened. Happy, can feel a massive shift, a feeling of being born all over again. The room feels different. My life experience feels different. Everything is just new. I'm way more amazing than I ever give myself credit for. Physically, I felt like I was on a high last night. It was a whirlwind of emotions. I couldn't stop smiling. I cried, I laughed, and I felt like it was all for the first time. Body felt tingly. Brain felt like it had been turned inside out. Like I rode a roller coaster for 3 straight hours. First record. And then I went to the recording, because so after we do the session, Michele will do the last 30 minutes of like what the new wiring needs to look like, right? New beliefs. And you have to listen to that for 21 days, which, by the way, guys, that is just as important as the actual session. Like, absolutely, we're going to get into that here in a second, but there's so much shit that came out after the fact. Like I noticed it about 72 hours after, like when the dust kind of settled and I had a new reality, I was like, oh, wow. And I remember
it's like doing a brain detox, right? Like extracting the old stuff and you're starting to put in new stuff. But anytime you do a diet, your body's like, hey, whoa, hey, what are you doing? Like, what? Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm glad I read this, because I saw some things that I had forgotten about. But doing this, I remember I would just like look forward to my sessions, like the recorded part. I'm like, yes, like I can't wait for this. And at the end, that kind of dwindled away. I didn't like, because I felt like I had rectified my issues, I reconciled things, and I was fine. Like I just didn't feel like I needed. But at first, man, it was like oxygen. I just couldn't and I had been underwater for years. I just could not like get enough of it.
And
that was really powerful.
The important thing here for folks to realize, the reason why I have you listen to that recording every day for at least 21 days is because you literally are rebuilding, building new neural pathways in your brain. You're dismantling old negative beliefs and you're reinstalling new positive beliefs.
Yeah.
And the more you listen to it, the more stronger those connections become. And that's when the initial feeling of, oh, this is oxygen to my brain started to diminish, because it had become ingrained. It had started to take hold.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And then the other thing you explained to me was about the amygdala, which is a part of your brain, which we now fondly call Amy.
Amygdala. Mm-hmm.
Amy, oh my God. That is so cheese. I love it. So Amy is going to try to get you back in order, right? To protect you. Like that's the amygdala's job. It's to like maintain order. And so she's going to be alive. Yeah, she's going to be pretty unhappy with you to be messing around like this. So it's important that you, in personifying her as a person, like as an identity, right, as an entity, is so helpful, because there's times when Amy would do something, I'm like, this is not me, this is Amy. This is not me, this is Amy, right? And that allowed me to continue to move forward, other than the internal, the eternal and internal struggle of, oh my God, my brain is all over the place. Like I was able to kind of differentiate between the two, and that really helped me a lot. But the one thing that I wanted to bring up in line with reading this, and I wrote notes the first one.
Pages and pages. But it's all brilliant. I mean, it's great to.
But I said,
it really helped our coaching sessions too. That
totally
after that, because I could go back in and see like, oh, this is what came up the next day or 2 days later, and we can go back to it and then unpack more of the finer nuances of those different shifts that were happening.
Yeah, and I can't imagine doing this and not having that. Like even right now, going back and reading this, like it takes me to that place again. You know, like I remember it all over again.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine. And then we were able to dialogue back and forth. And like, I think that's why we made the progress that we made, is because we were able to jive back and forth throughout the week building up to the sessions, because this is my methodology. And this is what I do with my clients. Like, I don't want to spend 3/4 of our meeting going over stuff that you should have been doing leading up to that. And then just, you know, going over that. I want to talk about the new stuff so we can move forward faster, more velocity.
Exactly. Yeah. So
mindset.
Yeah. So having the journal and, you know, you can email me, text me in between our sessions so that we are on the same page when we get to that next session.
So the last thing I want to say on that first session, as far as like my notes after the fact, and I'm reading through this, I'll summarize, but I basically said that I felt I was getting a little too comfortable around people. I had a podcast interview with Marie Forleo the next day, which anybody who knows the online space knows Marie Forleo. Like she is a big time.
Big deal.
She's a big deal. And I had worked, we had been back and forth with her team for like 3 years to really get that on the schedule. She's really tough to nail down. So anyways, I told her the impact that she's had on my life and my wife's life. Like we were at a really dark place when we first started as entrepreneurs, and like we found Marie like gave us hope, and we used like that online mentality to grow that business. And we spent $400 on Facebook ads and we got a $23,000 return. This was the Wild West when Facebook, like it wasn't nearly as competitive as it is today. I don't think you could do that today. Please don't try. I mean, definitely try to do Facebook ads, but don't have that expectation. That's crazy.
Right. Exactly.
But anyways, so I told her that story as I opened up that podcast episode, that interview with her, and I started crying. And I was like, what do I do? Like, I was just not there's just too much dust that was going on. Like I shouldn't have scheduled it the next day.
Well, your heart was really open for the first time in a long time, which is huge.
But you know what though? All that, and then the people that I converse with, they felt something with me, a different level of connection that they hadn't felt before. Right. And so like I have a good relationship with Marie and her team now. And we're actually talking about having her back on and like doing some really cool stuff. We became affiliates for B School. We made a ton of money doing that, helping her do that. So I don't know that would have happened if I wasn't as authentic and just genuine as I was with her. Right. Like,
yeah. And I really want to underscore that, Chris, because that's been a really massive shift for you.
It has.
Because of your experiences in your childhood. Emotionally, you were very shut down. Yeah. You had closed off because, as you said to me, feeling isn't safe. Mm-hmm. I would have gotten in trouble. I would have been punished if I was to this or to that. Yeah. And so for you, the best thing to do was to shut it down. And you moved through the world quite well in that way. But once we cracked that open, and then over the 90 days where we continued to crack it open further and further, it's had a massive shift for you in a lot of different ways. So why don't you tell folks about that?
Yeah. So the days thereafter, I'm kind of scrolling through here to see what we had. But the biggest thing that I noticed was, and this was day 2 as I looked through my notes here. So let me fill people in on what this is. We're going to talk about this later. So I wear devices, like I mentioned on several occasions so far, that measure a lot of your biometrics throughout the day. And one of those, it's a really, really important biometric that you need to be measuring yourself, if at all possible, is called HRV, which stands for heart rate variability. So effectively what HRV does is it tells you the amount of stress that you are under. Now, let me qualify that. Stress can be a lot of things. Sometimes stress is good. Sometimes stress is bad. Chronic stress is bad for you. If you have stress, but it's a short period and then you kind of pull yourself back, it's actually good for you long-term to have that. Like stress is not bad. I'm not telling you go be a monk. Like that's not what I'm saying to do. Because it's actually been proven that it is good for you to have those moments where you're under the pressure cooker, as long as you're able to pull back and detach from that.
Right.
With me, what happened is that if your mind is constantly going, even when you're not working, even when you're not doing stuff, and you're constantly under stress, right? It has a chronic effect, and it's slowly. So your body is intrinsically designed to protect you, right? Because bear eats person, run from bear. Well, if you're constantly in a state of bear is chasing me, your body focuses on nothing else but bear, right? So bear being stress, symbolic of stress, eventually your body starts shutting down because it's only focused on bear. That's it.
Right. Because your cortisol levels go through the roof. Your adrenals are producing all this stuff to help you run, literally run. Right? And so your immune system slows down, your digestive system slows down. That's why when we get stressed, we tend to gain weight because all of those processes shift to help you run, even though we're running from things in our mind.
Get this too. So you'll store weight around your waist area, because if the body thinks for so long it's under attack, it'll start protecting your major organs. So it will literally start storing fat in those regions to protect your major organs.
Yep.
So, and then if you produce way too much cortisol continuously, you'll stop producing it altogether. So now I've had chronic low cortisol production for a long time. So my body is unable to combat normal stress. So people that have severe hypoadrenia, they can't deal with any stress at all. Like there's no push, there's no go in them because their body's just like, they're in the middle of the Sahara Desert and they have been for a long time with no water. They're just dying, right? Like they just have been given too much. So I had been hovering at that point. I said I can go from a 78 or 73 to 38 in a matter of 24 hours. I was having massive swings. Now, lower the score with HRV, the worse, right? So you would think it's the opposite. You think higher HRV score means higher stress. It's the opposite. So it basically, think of it this way, like it's the drag on your body. So if you drag, it's going to pull things down.
Right.
So HRV is lower. Now, I was hovering at that point. We're going to get to that later. But I was hovering around 50s, 40s, 30s, which is really low for my age. It's really low pretty much for anybody. But 2 days after our session, I was at a 77. I don't think I had seen a 7. Yeah, it was a record. I said, I'm at a 77 today, which is a record high for me. My baseline is usually right around 60. So I was up about 17 points on day number 2. That was pretty wild. So I remember walking around, even like being in my shower or like driving in my car and like communicating with other people. It was just like I was seeing it through someone else's eye. Like I had never seen that place or been those or done those things before. It was like everything had so radically shifted that it was just like an entirely new experience. It was so bizarre. Plus I felt good, which was nice because I had like this burden that was just gone. But even as the dust started to settle in the days thereafter from the first session, and this was the most massive shift of all the shifts that we experienced because it was that big initial boom, right? It was huge.
It was a big boom.
It was the big boom, literally. And I just remember thinking like this is my new normal. Like this is like my new life, right? And it was just so interesting. And like I wish I could go back and just explain what I even in more detail how I felt in that. Like I remember for a long time I viewed work as like, and this was a lot of conditioning of like, you don't mess around at work. You just go get stuff done. Like you just got to get shit done and you plow through it and you crush it and you make money. And like, so when you have burned yourself out to the ground, you don't have any fuel left to go put into that kind of fire. So I remember work felt like this really difficult task. Like work was just like, oh God, I can't. Like I literally couldn't. Like there's nothing to run on. Like there's nothing to keep doing that.
Right.
And I remember I sat down and I just was like working and I was like listening to music and like just doing stuff. And I got more stuff done in that day than I had in months, if not years, because I had this different framework of like work can be fun and like I can enjoy things. And I remember I was connecting with Kim, my wife, on like a new level. I remember I opened the door after the session and I looked in and I just had like a smile on my face. And she was like, what are you cheesing about? And I was like, oh my God, like that was amazing. So, anyway, she was just like, who is this person?
So it's so great because I remember one of about might have been like 2 months into our work. I get this text message from you on a Saturday and you're like, oh my God, I just worked a 14-hour day and I feel great. And for you in the past, that was absolutely unheard of.
Yeah.
because it was all coming from that pushing through versus allowing and being joyful in it. And so I've seen these other massive shifts in you as well, which has been just really a joy to behold. So
and I think that's such a dangerous path for type A specifically. And this is why it's so important for entrepreneurs to listen to this message, because when we as entrepreneurs, we have to produce, or we don't eat, we don't pay bills, the business dies. Right. And so it's very easy to fall into that trap of like, I remember when I tell people the story, when I made my first $1 million and I was 27, and I was like weeks before my 28th birthday. And I was like, I thought this is what I always wanted. I remember when I was in high school, I was like, I want to generate $1 million before I'm 30. That was my goal. I want to be a millionaire when I'm 30. It's like a stupid, I mean, it's an admirable goal.
Admirable goal, but not at the cost of your life.
But as an entrepreneur, you should know that there's no reason to put artificial like milestones in your life, right? Because it causes you to make stupid decisions in pursuit of that goal, right? So like sometimes I put my team in compromising situations. I wouldn't empathize with where they were, because all I'm focused on is this finish line of this goal. I'm not saying it's not good to have goals, but just be careful about pursuit of that one thing, because you could literally sabotage everything else in pursuit of that one thing. It's a really tough one.
Absolutely. And as a leader of your organization, the fish rots from the head down. So if the leader is running on 20 hours a day, everybody else is running to try to keep up.
Yeah.
Right. And so you'll burn out your whole team too, if you're not careful.
Yeah.
I've seen it a lot with the teams that I've worked with. So.
Totally. And I just remember when we literally passed the $1 million. I remember exactly where I was. It was when I was like defining moments. And I remember I just didn't feel anything about it. This was like a 12-year goal that I had. Right. And I achieved it. You would think like I was just like exuberant about and over the moon about doing this thing. And it was just like, I remember one of the first comments I made was like, okay, now what about $1 billion? Like, it was just like on to the next.
Wait, let me raise the bar quick. Let me raise the bar myself. And that's very common. It's very, very common.
Yeah. And so we discovered that in our work together is that like nothing is ever enough. And you kind of like pin yourself into a corner of like, no matter what you do, you're not good enough. You're not enough. You're not this, you're not that. Right. And that goes back to a lot of the bad data that I had been given, where I could have scored 58 points in a basketball game. And the focus was on the 3 turnovers that I had that were stupid, whatever. Right. Like,
right.
So that's where a lot of that stuff can be really toxic quickly, specifically if the stars align with a type A driven type person. So anyways, what I want to ask you, because I'm talking way too much here. What I wanted to ask you was like, what was your perception throughout the time thereafter? So the format is we do RTT, and then the next 3 weeks, it's talking about what's coming out from that session. It's not, and at first I didn't get it. I was like, why don't we just do hypnosis every week? Right. Me being the crush it type, because you don't have enough time to digest and process the things that you had happen, because there's so much, it just keeps coming out. Right.
Yes.
It's like you open the closet and it's just everything pours out. In my case, it was a very big closet door.
Everything comes toppling down. No, absolutely. And that's why I've created the rapid rewiring process, which is it's a 2-hour hypnosis session, RTT session. And then I follow it with 3 weeks of coaching sessions, because those allow us to unpack the different things that are bubbling up to the surface, because sometimes not everybody's like Chris, y'all, just so you know. He's an overachiever in so many ways. So not everybody gets instant results in 24 hours, right? That's not the norm. It's an unfolding. Sometimes it's a couple of days. Sometimes it takes an entire month to see the shifts, because they happen in micro movements, right? And so the coaching is there to really help you pull those apart, because I am a really great listener. And so I can listen to what my clients are talking about and what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and can go, wait a minute, what if we pull that apart just a little bit, and then you can say, oh, well, that's different. That's shifted, right? And sometimes there's these little tiny shifts, but then that leads to other ahas, and then other homework assignments. I give homework, by the way. Right. So Chris was working on different things in between too. And so one of my favorite assignments that bubble up, they kind of just come out intuitively for me, is because this whole process, this initial first month, was Chris thinking that he wasn't enough, right? There was this constant trying to achieve more, be more. Life was a competition, and he always had to be better than somebody else. And so I had him reach out to several friends and family and ask them what was their perception of him. And he got some beautiful, amazing feedback from family members and some very close friends that he's known for a large part of his life. And so how did that impact you when you were able to read some of that stuff, Chris?
Well, it's interesting. And I'll say the positives first. I knew people thought highly of me, these people, but I didn't realize just how highly they thought of me. Like, I mean, I'm looking now, I'm scrolling and I'm looking at paragraphs and paragraphs. I mean, people, I could fill like a good portion of my
70. There was 10 pages of feedback that he got.
No, it was nuts. And obviously, I expected that from my wife. And there's many things that she said. Like one of the things that she said is that she will be in a room if we meet new people, and she literally counts the seconds to see like how fast it takes people to become fascinated with me. I had no idea that she like played that little game in her mind. So it's really interesting. And I've noticed it now that I have a more like clear headspace. I've actually noticed that a little bit. That sounds really braggadocious, but I certainly am not trying to be. But looking through this, I mean, it's crazy, but I think one of the biggest things that I took away, with all the amazing things that they said and all the amazing ways that, cause you had me ask like the ways that I've impacted them, and all of them were like very similar in that I've literally changed their life in some way that was really impactful. Even people that are like mentors of mine that you think a one-way thing, not transactional, right? Like people that I really admire that have built and run $100 million companies, and to see that like I have blessed their lives in ways that I didn't know that I had was super revealing. And the only reason that I knew, and I was so frustrated. Oh, and I can't forget this. My in-laws. So most people, I mean, they want to take when they say take out the trash, they think it means take their mother out or their mother-in-law out. Like they have a really bad relationship with their in-laws, and like they don't want to see them. They just spend the least amount of time possible with them. My in-laws wrote this like long thing, and I'm just like,
it was beautiful.
Nobody has that kind of relationship with their in-laws. And if you have the context of knowing my in-laws and knowing the standards that they have, not only for themselves, but for others, like it's very high bar. And to see that from them was very powerful. It was very powerful. And I can't even read it now because I'm going to get like teary eyed about it. Like it's really powerful. Yeah. But I think the thing that was so frustrating and made me realize, because as things started happening, I started to see, I remember I told you, I just want to take my brain and wash it in the sink, because I was now aware of all this stuff, yes. Right? My brain felt dirty. I'm like, you just start to see stuff that you didn't even know was there, right? Like this data that you've been given, it becomes so entrenched and it becomes so much who you are, that all of a sudden you see it and it's like cockroaches everywhere. Like you just want to call an exterminator and just get rid of all of them. And so this was one of the most powerful ones, is like in line with the nothing is ever enough. This is not enough. You're not enough. You got to do more. Prove it. Some of them would say like, I'm so glad you're doing this. You're doing this for yourself. You deserve, whatever. Or they said, I hope that you can find your true path. I remember my father-in-law said something to the extent of, and I want to trust his privacy here. I'm not going to read it because that's not why he wrote it, was to be broadcasted globally. But he said something to the effect of like, when you get sick, you can become a little bit like self-absorbed or selfish or whatever. And like that, when I read that one line of everything he wrote, that was all that stuck here. And it was,
there was 10 pages of love, and he got the one line of something wrong with you, right? And that was very telling to the depth of how far this self-belief went, And so from there, I knew, okay, we've got some more digging to do. Right?
And he even qualified it after. He said, but you do so with grace and you don't do it in a way that makes anybody feel whatever, right? Like he even qualified saying, they're like, I know you do it. I know you're in pain and I know you're sick. And I know that you're trying, even though it's really like you don't feel well. You know what I mean? Like, but even still, that was all my brain. Like I can remember those specific things above all else, right? Everything everybody said, of those specific things of what they said. And that was like, okay, I know we still have more. So I was a bit overwhelmed at that point because it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much. 90 days is, I remember at first I was like, I don't know if I need to sign up for 90 days because you offered a 30 and a 90-day program. I'm like, I'll just crush it. We'll just do it in 30. And then I was like, can we do like 160 days? Like there's no.
You're like, we're going to have to do this for months and months and months. I'm like, no, probably not. We'll see how far we get. But yeah. And, ultimately 90 days was just what you needed.
Yeah. So.
And we covered a lot of territory.
Yeah.
We did. Covered a lot of territory.
Yeah, we did. All right. Yeah. So let's kind of talk a little bit about more about what sessions 2 and sessions 3, like month 2 and month 3 entailed. Because I don't want to jump too far ahead here. I have more things that we need to talk about, but I obviously want to make sure that we do it justice and talk about some of the things, because one of the things that you talked to me about before we started recording was how much I was willing to share about certain things. So I don't know if there's anything in particular that you wanted to get into as far as it relates to that, or anything that you felt like would be beneficial for people to hear about, maybe situations that you've come across where people have certain things that they're dealing with that you saw that we have commonalities that could benefit them. Or maybe things that they think that there's just no way that they're ever going to overcome that we were able to overcome. So I'll kind of give you the reins and let you take it from there, because I know that was something that you were interested in bringing up with me.
Sure. Now I'm just looking over some of the notes that I took in preparation for our call today. And, I think throughout this process, there's been these places for you of you've been very self-critical. There was the not feeling enough. And so there was behind that was the constant need to prove yourself, and you were constantly judging yourself. So that's where you kept raising the bar and raising the bar and raising the bar. And there was that judgment overwhelm, because not only were you judging yourself, but you were fearing judgment from everyone else. So it landed as this constant need to perform and not just relax, which is how you got to the physical issues that have manifested from all of this. Because there's been this very long arc of this, everything's a competition. I have to prove myself to everyone and everything, no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing. And so in months, the second and third month, we were able to continue to whittle away at that by shifting the perspective and allowing yourself to actually receive praise, to receive compliments, and just take it in, and then feeling it, right? Again, back to that place of, oh, you weren't allowing yourself to feel things, which was creating an almost physical barrier between you and everyone you were coming in contact with, right? Yeah. So we eliminated that. And so tell people how that has shifted things for you in, the different relationships that you have in your world, and how it's impacted your work as well.
Allowing myself to accept praise, that part?
To accept praise and to allowing yourself to feel more deeply. Yeah.
So I think the thing is, I remember messaging you about it, and I was like, I feel like I'm a badass now. But I felt uncomfortable saying that, because there's so much when you have that mindset for so long of like, you write it off as humility, right? You're like, well, I'm just being humble, but it's like a dangerous, toxic level of like, it's okay to deep down know that you're good and like you are confident and like you are qualified to do what you're doing. And then there's like toxic levels of like not even allowing yourself to feel that at all for even a slight moment, right? But then writing off as humility.
And there's two extremes to that, right? There's the not even allowing yourself to feel it, but then there's also super egotistical and, oh, sure, I'm a badass and look at me.
Yeah. And
that's what we're pointing to is not that. It's just, I'm comfortable in my skin. I know who I am, and I know the expertise that I have to offer.
Yeah. So I really, that's where I was really kind of nervous about where I like, it was like both, where do I fit in this spectrum of like narcissistic, this isn't healthy versus, okay, I'm not allowed to give myself anything, right? Like, where do I fit in that spectrum? And I remember like asking you. And so I would just do little things. I remember like I had this random urge to write something on my mirror to myself. And I put something to the effect of like, I am the greatest person that I know, or the strongest person that I know, or something like complimentary to myself. And that was the first time I'd ever allowed myself to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was weird because for so long, I don't know, I've always been a confident person in my abilities, right? Like I remember the first conversation that we had, it was like, you don't strike me as somebody that's not confident.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like, and it's not a facade. It's really not. Like I would say, like, I don't care. I would say if it was, it was more of like, on the outside, I have enough data and proof to show that I should be confident. Right. So like I can do things with confidence because I know that I can do them.
Correct.
Right. But then there's like this inner certainty about who you are that is just, it's different. Like I can't articulate it.
It's a different level. It's a believing in yourself.
It's like conditional versus unconditional. Like it's like I conditionally am confident because I'm doing well in life.
Right.
Like the data and the statistics show me that I'm doing well. So I have every reason to be confident. But then it's like the unconditional place is like, you know what? I've had a 6 months of just crap. And I'm still know I'm the stuff. Like I still know that I'm good enough to do this. And that was my confidence and my belief in myself was somewhat conditional in that regard. And I never experienced that more until I got sick, until my sickness got to a point where we're at the end of the road. And was so bad that I couldn't do anything because I had like a massive identity crisis where it was like, if I'm not this, then who am I? Right. Like so much of my confidence had been built up on my entrepreneurial like successes and my journey as an entrepreneur. And, you know, Chris Harris was the startup entrepreneur that had built multiple 7-figure business. Like I would introduce myself as that because that was what I clung to.
Right. It was your title. Right. And, but it's also a shield and a facade. Right. Because behind that, and I went through my own crisis when my title was taken away and I was like, whoa, who am I now? And so it's that getting at ease, comfortable, loving yourself so much that you're just like, oh, this is who I am. And it doesn't matter what I'm doing out in the world. I'm comfortable in who I am, just as I am and just as I'm not.
Yeah. And so to answer your question, I guess full circle here, as far as what that looks like now, I would do a lot of things that were detrimental to myself and to my cause and to my family in pursuit of I have to prove it, like it's like I was always trying out for something like, always. And so if somebody asked me to do something that really wasn't advantageous for me to do it, right? Like, speaking at an event, which I get asked a lot to speak at events, and I'm happy to do it when I can, but sometimes the stars just don't align. But I felt like I couldn't say no to those things. I always had to say yes, right? Like every opportunity, if somebody asked me to do this, that, or whatever, like I had a really tough time saying no to those things, right? And if I did, I felt like I would focus on other people and like how I was letting them down, and then what are they going to think about me as a result and stuff like that. I think the biggest thing that's happened as a result one of the biggest things that's been as a result of the work together is I know what I want to do in the world. I am comfortable with who I am in the world. And my default is no to anything that takes me away from those things. And that might sound like a lot of people are like, well, he just is a grumpy old recluse now. And I'm like, no. It's the confidence to competence loop that Brendon Burchard talks about. It's knowing what my highest level of contribution is and having extreme clarity on what I need to do to make that happen.
Right. It's operating from that sweet spot, as I like to call it. Right. Yeah. And knowing where is the best use of your energy, your time, your talents, and saying no to the things that are the distraction from that or are going to be an energy suck in some way, shape, or form. Right. Yeah. I talk about this in my ebook, Saying No with Grace and Grit. Right. Because we're programmed to say yes to people please, to take care of other people, even at the detriment of ourselves. Right. I see this so often, especially in women. Right. Because we're programmed that way from generations and generations of taking care of other people, right? And so I applaud you wholeheartedly of really being so clear now, like, oh, this is my zone. And I say yes to things in my zone and I say no to things outside of my zone.
Yeah. But to do so confidently was the major shift, right? It was like, I would say no because I literally just didn't have the time, but then I would always linger on that and think about it, and be like, oh, maybe I'll try to make a way to make it work, and I can maybe do this and arrange that. And it's just like, no, it doesn't work for me right now. Like, it just doesn't. Right. And being confident in what I'm doing.
Clear and clean.
Steadfast. So there's another part of that too, though, that came up with that, oh yeah, I know what it was. When I would be in rooms before, like, let's say it was like a networking event or something like that, I felt like I had to say the perfect thing. I had to have the perfect pitch. I had to always be present. I had to have the most engaging conversations. I had to always, like, so you could become uncomfortable in those social settings. And which is weird. No one would ever know that about me because I'm like,
you're stealth in that way.
I remember I told you I would literally be like the life of the party when I had that life before, like when I was in college and like parties like that. Like, my friends would be like, you're coming, right? Because they needed somebody to make sure that like there was communication and it was just sitting around in awkwardness. So I've always been a really communicative person, but I didn't realize that it came from a place of anxiety. I didn't realize it came from an anxious place. I just thought it was just whatever. Right. But I always was like, man, I'm exhausted. Like, I can't do, like, I knew it. I knew that there was some like anxious level of something that just wasn't good. And then when you get to the point where you're sick and you can't do that anymore, and you're still putting the pressure on yourself. Like, now I remember I meant to text you and tell you this the other day. I was at an event. I spoke at an event this past weekend for podcasters, which I'm not a podcaster. I'm an entrepreneur with a podcast. Make sure you guys know that. And that's nothing against podcasters. I have my own reasons for that. I just don't like to be put in boxes. I'm a rebel. I don't like to be put in boxes.
You're hilarious.
So
don't put me in a box.
Yeah, don't put me in that box. And I'm like that with everything too. Politics, religion, everything. Don't put me in a box.
Absolutely.
I just feel like immediately you just make assumptions that I don't like. So, and not you, Michele, like you.
Yes, the ultimate
universe.
They out there listening.
Yeah, don't put me in that box. But in the past, I would have felt a lot of pressure to like talk to the people there and like be on all the time. And I remember I just was like there, and now I can sense all these things that I've done. It's like I'm on the Jedi Council now. Like, I can see all the younglings like really struggling with stuff, and before I didn't see those things, right? But I was just comfortable. And I remember before, I was standing by myself, I would be like, oh my God, I'm by myself. No one's talking to me. Like, people are watching me, and like I'm not doing this. And they're like, why is he not talking to anybody? Why is he acting weird? Like, those things would go on in my head, like that anxious, like, oh my God, I got to talk to somebody.
Right. It was all of that fear of being judged. Right. People are watching me and someone's judging me, and oh my gosh, am I getting it right? Am I getting it right? And I see this a lot with entrepreneurs, right? There's always that internal head noise that is driving you. I brought your friend, by the way. Your butt gremlin friend is here.
Oh, the butt monster.
The butt monster. See, this is what happens when you butt yourself. But I got to do this. But I got to do that. But yeah, that's the butt gremlin.
Yeah. But this time I just was there, and I was like, you know what? If I'm not talking to somebody, I'm not talking to somebody. Like, it is what it is. Right. But I could literally sit and observe everyone else running around like with that same anxiety that I used to have. Right. And like, I'm so cognizant and aware of it now, but in the same time, I'm like in such a peaceful place. I'm like, you guys get it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm cool. But what's happened, which was totally contradictory to what I would have thought would have happened, is that it like kind of begets more respect. Like, people were like coming up to me and like, almost like they're like envying my level of security and confidence in myself. Right. Like, they can sense and feel that
tremendously, Chris, right? It went from this frenetic energy to this whoosh, a very broad, expansive, peaceful energy. And it's that intangible super ninja warrior stuff that we work with, right?
Totally.
That people can't quite put their finger on, but like, did you do something different in your hair? You look really great. Like, what's different? And they can't put their finger on it, but it's very attractive, right? Yeah. It's a big part of the work that I do, is helping people really own their power and stand in that energy really fully, because that's what creates that that unconscious attraction, because you're literally vibrating at a higher energetic frequency because you're more positive, more peaceful, more grounded. And that's what people want. So they can, what I know you were wanting, right? Living a more peaceful life, not having to constantly crush it and push through things with difficulty, but just allowing flow and ease, right?
Right. Totally. Well, let's chat a little bit, because I want to get into the data, because we're kind of running out of time here, but I want to get into the data of what we discovered after the fact. Because it's definitely evident. So I was pulling up some of this now while you were just talking.
Pretty extraordinary, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I was like, yay, science experiment, whoop, whoop.
Yeah, but there's also some now that I've had some time to like really ponder over it and really do some deep dive work into it. Definitely some things that I've learned that I don't think were the case before. That things that I think people envy of my ability now in relation to these numbers. But before we get into that, I want to make sure that I covered this. What are some of your observations? And I'm not doing this for like, you to hand me a trophy or whatever and say like, good job, Chris. Like I just want people in the audience to kind of see like what a transformation can look like. Like what was your perception before versus what, obviously we've talked about a lot of examples of, specific examples about what happened, like what things actually shifted and changed. But I guess from a high level perspective, what I guess is your major takeaway, for me as a client, in line with this is what my perception of you was before, and this is what my perception of is you now from a professional perspective, from your perspective.
Sure. So when I first met you, I've always been impressed by your level of confidence and expertise, right? When we first met on the original podcast. But there was that frenetic energy, right?
Interesting.
And so the biggest shift that I've seen and witnessed over these, last several months in you is that that frenetic energy is gone, and you are much more grounded and peaceful from the inside out, which allows you to run your business from a place of that flow and ease and grace, and knowing when I can put it down and then I'll just come back to it tomorrow, versus like, oh, I've got to crush it. That the whole crush it thing has shifted. It's not that you can't do that, and you do when it's required, but it's not the constant driver that was underlying everything that you were doing before.
Yeah.
And so watching you shift to literally separate, church and state, home and office, just how, you and Kim have, moved into your new place, and how you've separated those things out so that you have that time to be you, to be in your relationship with your wife, and to be doing your work, right? That's a massive, massive shift for you. And it's very evident to me in how you're showing up and how you're operating with the people that, you're working with.
Totally. So on that note, and by the way, I think that assessment is spot on. That's exactly how I feel. I really do. I just feel like there is so much less, I would call it anxiety, but to your point, frenetic energy, I think almost synonymous in that regard. I think it's just like, you know what, today is today, and I'm just going to, like, if I don't feel good, I don't feel good. Like, I'm just going to deal with it. And I remember that was
done today, what I get done today, what I don't get done today.
Right. It doesn't dictate how I feel about myself. Right. Before,
right.
Again, it was all circumstantial, contingent upon my production and my output.
Right. Who I am is what I produce in a given day. Now it's who I am is who I am, and what I produce is what I produce. And those are two different things. And a lot of entrepreneurs get all of that intertwined.
So here's the part that's really exciting. And I'm going to include this. We do long form blogs with all of our, cornerstone content. So this is going to be included in there whenever this is going to be weeks before this actually comes out in audio, and before we do the blog and what have you, for those that are watching live. But I'll show it for the sake of seeing it on camera here. Maybe you can be able to see it. I don't know. But one of the things we've noticed the most is that my overall stress level is a 27, which is still in the low category. That all said, what you will notice though, is I'm still crushing it. Like I'm still in crush it mode. So like Michele can see all the orange is stressful levels. The blue is low levels. You can tell when I'm working and when I'm not. It's very evident. So here's the thing though. It's okay to crush it. There's nothing wrong with wanting to go get after it, right? Like when I work, there's no bullshit. It's no playing around. Like, and I like that. I prefer that. Here's the deal though. If it's red across the board all day long and there's no blue, you got a problem, because now your average score isn't 27, it's 87 or 97.
Right.
So the thing is now is that one of the things that I think people have become envious of, and one of the things that I'm most proud of from the work that we've done together is that when I turn it off, I can turn it off. Like I can literally right now
step away from your phone.
Literally, I can literally right now turn this off, shut down my computer, go downstairs, and I'm immediately in blue. And I can watch too on my Garmin here. Garmin, which by the way, I'm going to include below in the description. I'm going to include that because for $100, it is $99 on Amazon. It is a worthwhile investment. I have a BioStrap. I'll include that one as well, which is more of your night sleeping, which is the really in-depth HRV. If you want to go mega, like on steroids version of that, it's the Aura Ring, which mine is coming in now. I'm going to do a review on that as well. So the BioStrap of the Aura. And then this is the VivoSmart 4 by Garmin. And I'm telling you, bang for buck, this Garmin, I told Michele when I messaged her a couple of days ago or a week ago or so, I was like, there's not a single entrepreneur that shouldn't have this tool. I mean, it literally will tell me, hey buddy, go for a walk. Hey buddy, drink water. Hey buddy,
get up, step away from your
machine. Buzz. It will literally buzz and tell me when I'm not doing something right. Right. So hey, you're now getting out of the blue range too much. We need to go back to blue a little bit. So it kind of protects you from yourself in a lot of ways. And a lot of type A's, like that's what we need. So I really recommend it. So that's really important to know. But I appreciate you sharing, kind of your insights. I totally agree with that assessment. I think that's exactly how I feel. But let's get into some of the actual biometrics, because I know that part you're pretty excited about too.
I am.
So like I said before, my baseline HRV hovered right around a 58 prior. And this was in January. This was literally, I got the last recording. This was January. This was leading up to our first session, right? And after the first session, I did not take into account what the average was, because that's now not fair. That skews the data. So now I roughly am about a 75. I'm between a 70 and 80. So you're looking at a pretty serious uptick, about 20 points, 15, 20 points on any given day. It's not impossible, by the way. I've been seeing certain times throughout the night where I'll pull a 151 or a 126 HRV. So like really, really like blissful, just non-stressed at all moments. And I've been trying to, cause I'm just a nerd like this. I've been trying to like correlate that with what my dreams entailed, right? Like, what did I dream that night? And then go back and look at the data of when those HRVs
you are geek. I love it.
Yeah. Just to see because here's the thing. And this is really powerful, because one of the things that I've learned from this experiment with Michele is that the subconscious mind is so much more powerful than we give it credit for. Like,
amen, brother.
So if you're watching Game of Thrones before you go to bed every night, and people are getting hacked and raped and, butchered, like you're going to go to sleep with that data in your brain, right?
Yeah, don't watch TV when you go to bed at night, people. Just don't.
And I've got the data to prove it. Like you could have a great day, go through all of your routines, eat all the right foods. And that's one thing that I definitely want to mention is like, this is a completely holistic approach. As you can see, like my day, I don't want anybody to go into one thing and say, I just need to clean up my diet, or I just need to go to bed earlier, or I just need to do RTT. Like, the reason why we had such transformation that we had is because we've taken such a holistic approach in all of these areas.
Absolutely. Right? And I really applaud you, Chris, for your tenacity and really making sure that you did take this holistic approach. Yeah. He has changed his diet. He has changed how he lives and shows up and the things that he does to rest his body. And he's done the inner work too, which is not hard. It's not for the faint of heart. I'm not going to kid you. And so, but the rewards are huge. If you really want to create powerful change in your life, then absolutely, this is good stuff for you. I promise.
And it's all about velocity. It's like, I want to just get this done and move forward and enjoy my life. And like, For me, it's
why beat around the bush? That's what I say.
Just
right.
tackle it. Yeah. Just tackle it. So when I'm doing all this nerdy biometric stuff, like that's the reason why, is because I can glean data much faster than if it takes me years of finally recognizing patterns. Right. So like I can notice those patterns by tracking this stuff. So I was about a 58 average. Usually I saw a lot of days in January where I would be in the 30s, which is, like I said, that's extremely low. That's, your body's under a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't find a single day from about halfway through our work together. It was hard for me to find anything even in the high 40s or low 50s. So that's, again, that correlates with the 20 point uptick. You know, even it wasn't just the highs, it was the whole bar, like the whole damn bar lifted, right? The lows were now what my highs were before, and the highs were in unknown and uncharted waters. So that helps a lot, because no matter what you're doing diet wise, going to bed, all the things that I was doing right, if you are constantly, if the wheels are turning and you're constantly in that state of stress, it doesn't matter. Like, you're still going to stay where you are, and you're going to be stagnant. And that was what was happening. And
that's how powerful our subconscious is. Those old beliefs, those old fears, that self-doubt, that constant self-judging, it's powerful. And even if you're not conscious to it, right? And so this work helps you to get conscious to it, and eliminate it, rewrite it, rescript it, so that you're changing your go-to habit of what's normal, right? Because your brain likes what's familiar. And if your familiar pattern that you grew up in, that you learned as you lived it, as you were growing up, was, I'm not good enough, I'm judging myself, I'm not worthy, whatever that story is that you're carrying around, when you let go of that and change it to, I am enough, I am good enough, I'm smart enough, I'm capable, I'm worthy, et cetera, a rising tide lifts all boats, and everything shifts. Your energy rises, your perspective changes, and new and different things and opportunities start to come to you. So it's a really powerful ripple effect that happens.
Yeah.
And it's happened in my life, God bless Marissa Peer for creating this work and teaching it to me and to so many others around the world, because it is really powerful. It's changed my life. Absolutely. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. Because it's just like, nothing is ever the same.
That's awesome. Sleep quality. So here's the thing, what I said before about, when you go to sleep stressed, right? If you don't go to sleep in the blue state, the low stress state, you carry that into sleep. It's not like you turn the light off and all of a sudden, the stress goes away. Like, you take that into your sleep with you. And it's why a lot of people, it's a downward spiral, because they're stressed, they can't sleep, they have insomnia, which hurts their body. And then it just keeps feeding into itself.
Right. Absolutely.
It's not even a spiral. It's like a straight down nosedive when it gets bad enough. So by having that stressful state that I was in before, and not having those blue oceans in between where I can balance out my crush it, and just, even if I'm not crushing it, feel like I should be crushing it and beat myself over not doing that. I would get about a 60 to a 70 sleep efficiency score. So I was looking at my BioStrap, and it would say, like, your sleep. So my doctor said you need to sleep between X time and X time, right? So for anybody that has HPA axis, deficiencies or dysfunctionality, they tell you to sleep like an infant. Like, it's not about what you do, but it's also when you do it, right? So for me, I have to eat between certain times. I have to eat before 10 a.m. I have to have a snack at 10:15. I have to have another snack at 11:30. I have to have lunch at 12:30. I have a snack at 2:30. I have to eat between 5 and 6 for dinner. And I have to have a snack before I go to bed at 9:30. I've even gone 45 minutes outside of those windows, and I'm jacked. Like, it really affects me. Like, that's how closely I manage. It's almost a minute by minute, and that's hour by hour.
Super regimented.
It's very regimented. So usually they recommend, if you're having any kind of burnout, what they usually recommend is in bed by 10, asleep by no later than 10:30, right? And there's certain things you might have to do if your cortisol is flaring all over the place. I don't recommend self-medication. I recommend you work with a professional. a lot of people they're like, oh, get melatonin. Dude, melatonin that's a hormone. All right. You need to be careful with that. But magnesium, CBD, which CBD has been a godsend for me. That stuff has been amazing. It is an adaptogenic, which is really, really cool. And it really helps you with a lot of different things internally that are outside of just lowering your anxiety, right? It really helps inflammation. It has an abundance of various, I'll put a link in that shows you like all the crazy benefits of CBD. But anyways, so in bed by 10.
There's no THC in CBD.
No THC. Well, very, very, if there is, as long as it's very, very little, it still has positive effects on you. It just can't.
It's based off hemp, which doesn't has minuscule amounts of THC.
Exactly. So you're good.
That's why hemp is legal and cannabis isn't legal everywhere. So
right. So you're not going to get high. Like that's the whole. No. Yeah, you're not going to get high.
It'll help you relax, but in a different kind of way.
And I've been doing it in the morning too. It helps me kind of stay balanced throughout the day. It's actually been really helpful. But anyways, so 10:30, and then usually 7 to 9 for HPA sufferers, axis sufferers, 7 to 9 a.m. is actually, you get a lot of good quality deep sleep between those times. So they want you getting about 11, 12 hours, 10 to 12 hours a night. You have to sleep like an infant. You really do.
That's a lot of sleep.
It's a ton.
But your body's in serious recovery mode. So it makes sense. Absolutely.
But here's the thing. I was doing that, but I would see my sleep quality. Like if you look at the sleep time, it's through the roof. If you look at the sleep quality was way low. So if you take all that stress, it doesn't matter. If you take all that stress with you into sleep, and you have all this bad data going on in your mind, you could be in bed for 38 hours. Like nothing's going to shift. Nothing's going to change.
Absolutely. And that's why getting rid of the stress at the subconscious level is so powerful, right? Absolutely. Because you're not then running your brain at a frenetic pace, even while you are trying to sleep.
Right. So it's rare for me now in terms of sleep quality. And this has been, so I went from about a 60 to a 70 to about an 80 to a 90 range. Now I'm pretty much always in the 90s to the 100 ranges pretty consistently. So that's been a really, really positive shift.
That's huge.
A lot of things we put together, but definitely was the big catalyst in that was doing the RTT work gave me the bump that I needed. Right, it was kind of like the nitric oxide in my Fast and Furious car.
I got all the junk out of your trunk so you could run faster.
Yeah. And then so the thing is, all that data, a lot of people could listen to that and be like, okay, well that could be so, and this is all true, right? Like there are things that I learned. I started doing the CBD, and then just the natural evolution of me in my recovery journey. Like those metrics could, theoretically speaking, for anybody that's a contrarian, over the past 4 or 5 months, if the body's recovering, we could have potentially seen those metrics improve. And I thought this myself, like this isn't just for the contrarian, but what really proved it to me, like without a doubt, that this was absolutely beneficial in terms of my health recovery. So my DHEAS, which is the sulfated version of DHEA, which is a hormone that is produced by the adrenal glands. So specifically with my area of issue, right? Cortisol, DHEA, your adrenals manage a lot of your hormonal production and balance. So DHEAS is one of those hormones. And there's a long, like I read it and I don't even know what it means. And I've been doing this it's an endogenous steroid hormone. So it has a lot to do with your androgen, estrogen, sex steroids, metabolic, biosynthesis, like all these other, like just
all of that's good stuff.
Bottom line is that it's vital for your normal function as a human being. Like
right.
It's very important for your hormonal balance and production. So in December 28th, so about a month-ish.
My birthday.
Oh, happy birthday. Belated, way belated. 7.2 was what I registered on my DHEAS, which is really low. It's way below the threshold of where you should be for optimal function, not for your mean average of what is deemed an appropriate or a normal metric, right? Like standardized metric of where you should be, but it's way below optimal, which is where you want to be as optimal and why you need a doctor of functional medicine to help you achieve that. But the latest results came back And this was, gosh, what date was this? This
2
was
weeks
late,
ago, 3
2
weeks
weeks
ago
ago.
now?
So at the time of this recording, I think I submitted them late April. So probably April 22nd to be exact, the week of the 20th through the 23rd. I could pull up the exact date, but around that time frame. It's like 3.5 months later or so. We pulled an 18, so 16 to 18 range. So right in between. So we more than doubled in the DHEAS production over that course of time. Now, here's the thing, and you could still say, someone could still argue, okay, well, that could again be the natural evolution of this process. Here's the deal. I've been under the treatment plan for 2.5 years. After 2.5 years, I was at a 7.2 DHEAS. Okay. So we were tracking this stuff well before this time frame. It's like that was the genesis point of the first metric that we had. We had tracked this stuff before. And after 2.5 years, we were still well below the threshold at a 7.2.
What, just out of curiosity, Chris, what was it when you were like really in the thick of
it was so bad that the doctor's like, I don't want to overwhelm you. We're not even going to measure it. Like, I know it's terrible. So we didn't even do it at first. Like, we didn't even measure it at first. Because like, he was like, I don't want you to waste your money. I know it's terrible. I know you're flat. Now, I will say this, we did do the thyroid. The thyroid, I showed double goose eggs for iodine in the thyroid, in both the saliva analysis and the urine analysis, double zeros, which means no thyroid function at all. So, yeah. So your thyroid is basically dead. Like, you're just not doing anything. So that gives you kind of a little bit of an estimation of where it was at. We just knew that given the relationship between the thyroid and the adrenals, that it was probably equally as bad. There was no reason to keep going out and spend more money. We'd already spent like $2,000. So to give you a point of reference, like that's where it was. We were, and so my adrenal function, I was at I think the top of the line, like, you're going to die adrenal failure is like 272 ish. I was like a 229. So we didn't have this specific metric with the DHEAS, but it was bad. Let's put it that way. It was really bad. So what that means, and what my physician has told me, that we had that significant of a jump, is that he said, there's definitely a major shift that occurred. Something happened that was substantial that happened. Because usually what that means is, when you see a massive spike like that, is that the body is trying to recalibrate itself, right? The body now has like some kind of push to,
like, hey, let's
go, let's giddy up. Like, they come flying out of the gates. And so I noticed, I started seeing, and I kind of knew this, and I kind of got scared. Actually, I asked him, but I was getting these white, like, blotches on my face. And they were like issues with pigmentation. And that's a huge sign when that happens, of your body shifting and trying to like get things back in balance. So we saw it not only in the lab results, but we literally saw it physically on my face, where my body was making the shift. And this was during
stuff up.
No, and this did not happen over the past 2.5 years until we were about halfway through ish. We started to notice those white blotches pop up on my face, right around in the middle of the therapy that we were doing. So look, you can dispute the statistics, the data, whatever. You can say it's all horseshit. You can say it's whatever, but I can tell you with 100% certainty that there is inconclusive to me, or conclusive evidence, I should say. It is inconclusive. No, it is conclusive to me, not inconclusive.
There we go.
There we go. Third time's a charm. That 100% without a doubt, this was the catalyst on top of everything else that I was doing. I built a strong foundation. This was the rocket ship that blew me back out of the water. And now the beautiful thing is that before, I would go, when I first started, I would have about a day or 2 days in this journey, a month, that I felt what I would say decent, not even good, just decent. Now I would say, in terms of I am basically a normal human being, like normal as one could surmise. I'm basically a normal person, in that it's very rare for me. Like, I have to do something really stupid, against my routines. Like, if I skip, like, I can't do intermittent fasting right now. I'd love to. I think it's amazing. Like, autophagy is like ridiculous. Like, it's cellular regeneration. Like, it's really good stuff. And you should absolutely look into intermittent fasting. I can't do that right now. Like, I just can't. But this has definitely put me on the path of having a normal life again where I feel like I can push. In the past 30 days, I have sprinted like I haven't sprinted in years, and health wise, have not had. I had a few days where I had to take it easy when I got back because I did a 90-day business intensive in Sedona, and I got back and I was like, oh my God. But Kim, my wife, said, I keep saying my wife, everybody at this point probably knows who Kim is. Kim said to me, she was like, you're back. She was like, you're back. And I was like, I'm not back. I'm at a place I've never been before. Like, this isn't back. Like, this is new territory for me, because the inception of this, the genesis point of this ailment, this condition, probably took place, from what we can gather, between the ages of like 6 to 8 years old ish, around there. So this is brand new territory for me. I don't know what this life looks like not having this condition or not having this ailment. And I'm not even there. My doctor said probably between 75 to 80%, like in terms of full recovery. So like, to me, it's like, oh my gosh, there's more of this to come. Like, I'm like, I still can't work out. I can do light yoga and stretching and stuff like that, but I can't go. If I went to the gym and started pounding weights, I would be in big trouble. I can't do that. But man, even to be where I'm at now in relation to where we were on January 20th or whatever it was right before we did our session, it is night and day. And that's why I wrote what I wrote to you. Like, dude, you changed my life. Like, this is crazy stuff. Like, I never expected it to happen that fast. Like, that is pretty astounding.
Well, it's been an absolute joy to watch and to witness and to walk with you on this journey, Chris, because, you've been so dedicated to your health, more than I've seen in any other client I've ever worked with. And I worked with a whole boatload of people from all over the world. So I really commend you for that. And it's fabulous to see the amazing results that you're having and you're continuing to have, as you keep doing the work, right? It's not a one and done. You don't have RTT done to you. It's a participatory process, right? And you have to do the work in between the sessions as well, to really allow yourself to let go of those things that no longer serve you and to take in the new information that does serve you and let it seep into all the nooks and crannies at a cellular level. So well done, sir. Well done.
Thank you. So anyways, guys, I would be remiss if I didn't at least present this to you as an option for you to explore. And I'm not saying this is something you should absolutely do right now. I'm not saying this is something you should pursue. I am going to include the link in the description and in the show notes so that you guys can check that out. It's Michele's basically just general recording. It's not anything specific. So I've had people do that, like friends of mine go and use that recording. And from that alone, they felt something that it's like an appetizer, right? It's like, oh, this is cool. I'd like to actually dig into my own stuff to figure out what's going on. So anyways, guys, this is really powerful. I always say this, but in order to do more, you have to first be more. And part of being more is making sure that Michele posted something. I think it's the perfect way to kind of wrap things up here. But you posted about a certain type of shark. And if it lives in like a small like tank, it literally will not grow as it's supposed to. And then you put out in the ocean, it grows to 8 feet long. Like, and otherwise it'll stay like really, really tiny. Right. Like,
exactly. If you've got yourself stuck in a box, you can only get as big as the box is.
Yeah. So
but if you free yourself, amazing things can happen.
Yeah. And I felt that and I've experienced that. And I think part of my job and my role with this show is to communicate that, and a lot of times I have the ability to do that at a high level and I try to learn as much as I can and glean, but I can't be an expert in everything. Right. So it's good to have experts on.
Not required.
Right. So it's good to have actual experts on to talk about that. And this has been an expert in my life. And there's some people that have just been parting the Red Sea for me to achieve recovery, and not just recovery, but enter into, again, the unknown territory that I've never been, which I can tell you right now, like the path for my life and the trajectory for my life has been so exponentially increased because of the work that I've done with you, with Dr. Backer, with all the people that I've been blessed to have in my life. And like, even it's all been so serendipitous because it's like, even my mentor that I never expected to have, and I prayed for years to have somebody like him, like he's almost died twice. Like he's been through what I've been through. So like every step of my journey, I've had somebody put in there, and you're absolutely one of those people. So I literally cannot thank you enough. And thank you for taking so much time to join me to kind of share in this journey and letting me run my mouth and blabber about what happened throughout that process. I just think it's been such a transformative thing that I would feel so remiss if I didn't share that. I feel like I was stealing something from the world if I didn't share that. So
well, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us. I don't know if there's anything else as far as you want to say, as far as where people can reach out to find you on the web or find your website and kind of read more about this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You can always learn more about my rapid rewiring work at nectarconsulting.com. You can find me at, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and learn more about the work that I do. And I invite you to go to the brain candy section of my website. There's all sorts of free stuff there, a couple of ebooks with guided hypnosis recordings and some guided meditations as well for you to take in and absorb and delight in. So yeah, check it out. And if you're curious to know more and want to talk with me, you can always schedule a discovery session. My calendar's on my website, and I'd be happy to have a chat and see how I can be of service. So thank you, Chris, so much for having me on your show again. It's been a real delight to watch you transform before my eyes over these last couple of months, and super excited to be able to share your amazing journey with everyone here and all your listeners. So yay, it's been fun.
Awesome. All right, guys, take it easy. We're out of here. See ya.